This is a 10-year recap of how my brother and I went from sharing a one-bedroom apartment to retiring our parents and growing a multi-million-dollar business.
For those that don't know us, my name is Juan, this is my brother Alexis, and in 2019 we started a company that currently does over $3 million a year in revenue.
And so how we're gonna start is we're gonna start all the way before both of us were 18 years old. I know that we naturally had a tendency to be entrepreneurs, maybe without thinking it, because I know that I remember, at least for myself, I started selling Gatorades at the park. So what happened is that we used to play in a soccer team. I used to see some of the people outside of the park selling Gatorade, selling chips, selling this, and this. And I thought to myself that I would be able to do the same thing, but selling everything at $1. And so that's how I started, and it went good for a while.
And then I know that for myself, that eBay was an up-and-coming e-commerce company back in the 2009s, 8s. And so there was things lying around. We had games, we had just random things that I do believe people would buy. So I took pictures. I started listing it on eBay. It sold, we shipped, and yeah, that's how it started. Created a PayPal account, and so sold the items, went to the PayPal, went to the bank, and then we had some money. And so that's how I started at least on e-commerce.
Yeah, and that was when, how I mentioned it was before we turned 18. Fast forwarding to after we turned 18, insurance. We started selling insurance.
Yeah.
And so I remember that the first part is that you first started selling insurance, and then you showed me what you were doing.
Yeah, no, definitely. Insurance was something that definitely took us out of our comfort zone because it really involved selling.
Yep.
A lot of person to person, a lot of talking to groups. When we were selling insurance, there was a couple of events that we did presentations for adults, for people in their 30s, 40s, for people, 20, 30 people. Remember when we went to the Magnolia Community Center? We did a presentation there regarding the financial planning and insurance. And so it really took us out of our comfort zone. And I know that selling insurance, it really opened up our vision and what it is that we could do. Selling insurance, talking to a lot of people, it really got us, at least myself, and I know that to you too, out of our comfort zone. Yeah, and so it was just also through time that we weren't passionate about it. We weren't really into it. And I think if you go in with that mentality of not wanting to do it or not wanting to be there, I think through time it's just naturally gonna take you away from what it is that you're doing. At the same time, I know that there was a couple of events that did happen where we really got to know the individuals that we were working with. I don't want to bash anyone, but there was a lot of drinking, there was a lot of, I don't know if we want to put this, but there was drugs involved, there was a lot of things, there was cheating that happened. And so it's just the type of people we didn't want to work there. The environment wasn't what we were, the type of people that we were. So that really just took us out of that, not being passionate about it, not being into it. And then the fact that the people that you work with I wouldn't want to work with them. And so that just naturally shifted our focus and mindset away from that. And we started looking into other opportunities. But I know we needed money. So that's when we did start working at the jobs. Because I know right after you started selling vacuums.
I started selling vacuums door to door. Which that was more sales, which again helped me increase my skills. And then you started working at a job
with an attorney, taking sales calls, making calls, and so that I really also got to the hang of just talking to people. And so we still were in the industry of talking and selling to people, just in a different environment. But then I know that you at some point also got under the job.
Yep.
I also got a couple other jobs, and luckily I did find a job that was in e-commerce. So taking us back to how we started, I really got to learn how to go about listing the products on the different marketplaces, how to take images, the titles, SEOs, keywords. And so that really got me a lot of experience in the e-commerce space, at the very least for clothing.
When you got that job, I was working at a warehouse packaging candy. And I forgot how it came up, but I remember we wanted to start a business. And I think initially we wanted to start a brand. So for example, you sent to manufacture 100 shirts of whatever, or t-shirts, you put your logo, and then you start your brand. But I know that was gonna be capital intensive, because I know that we were doing the math. So for 100 shirts, if we paid $2 a piece, that was gonna be $200 plus shipping. So that's $200 that we didn't have. So what we did is, I know that we started doing e-commerce, but through a different avenue, which I know we started at Goodwill, right?
Yeah, and luckily YouTube was around, so we used to watch a lot of YouTube videos of people going to Goodwills.
I'm not sure, but I know that some people do dumpster diving. They do retail arbitrage.
Yeah, so going to places where the prices of things are very undervalued, buying those, and then selling it on the e-commerce. So example, we went to Goodwill, we found some John Varvatos, we found some Hugo Boss that were being sold for $2, $3, $4, $5. They weren't worth $2, $3, $4, $5. They were worth $50, $60, $70. So we just bought those, took pictures, cleaned them, and started setting in online, and that's how we made our profit, and that's how we started growing from there.
And then we moved into a storage unit because I know that we were running out of space because it was a few boxes of clothing and inventory. And so that was our next transition. But even then we were outgrowing it because I know that we had to drive 10 minutes away. So we had to drive back and forth multiple times a day, and that was very inefficient. So I forgot how we decided, but eventually we decided to just say, YOLO and get a warehouse. And do you remember how that happened?
We were really limited on space. The apartment with 4 people, my parents and us too, was only 400 square feet? Less than that. It was super small. So we got to the storage unit and we just said YOLO. And we were just driving around, seeing there's certain signs on warehouses or offices where it says call this number or for lease. And we just started calling, and then luckily there was one small warehouse in an industrial building that had to call. And so we called, we set up the meeting, we set up the tour. That person at that time was pretty cool, and they gave us an opportunity because at that time we were still relatively youngish. How old were you? You were 20, 21?
No, not even. I was 18.
Were you 18?
18 or 19. Okay. I think I was about to be 19.
So yeah, we were still relatively young, and then 2 18, 19, 20-year-old kids coming in trying to rent a warehouse. That's, as a landlord, I would think, that you would have some reservations about that. Yep. But luckily they gave us an opportunity. I think we had credit. We just paid that deposit, down payment, and we were good to go. And that's how we got into our first 500 square foot warehouse.
And it was $500 a month. That was really good on our end for us to find that unit, because those $500, that's something we were able to pay off from our job. So we did that all the way to, 2016, 2017. So eventually we grew it, because I know our first business we ended up calling Forma, Apparel. We started in 2016. And talking about numbers, I know that for that year, 2016, we made roughly $30,000 for that year. Now fast forward to 2017, I know that eventually within that same warehouse, we jumped to a bigger warehouse, which was 1,300 square feet. And that's where we really were able to scale, because we had more space to buy more inventory. And then during that 2017 period, I know that we decided to scale. So we ended up getting loans, and we each got them, and they were both $18,000. And all of that money was spent into inventory, and that helped us scale all 2017. So talking about numbers in revenue, I know that for 2017, we ended the year at $170,000. And then during that time, I know we scaled to a bigger warehouse. We also got someone to help us. I know that that was the first time we hired an employee, which was one of our friends, part-time. And fast forward to 2018, that was when we started seeing that the numbers were a little shaky.
Yeah, that was just due to bad decisions of buying the wrong inventory, buying the wrong pallets, and not looking at the market and what the trend was, which was shifting away from what it is that we were doing. So it was just a series of bad decisions, over leveraging ourselves, the debt that we had, the interest, so having to pay that. But on top of it, now we have a $2,700 a month warehouse payment. Aside from that, we have a part-time employee. We had car payments, we had to live, we had bills, and so it just started stacking up. And then at one point, we got to the point where in order to pay off everything that we needed to get other loans.
Yep.
And so, just a series of bad decisions, a series of over leveraging ourselves. It just caused us to, this isn't making sense. It's not working, because it doesn't make sense that in order to make the payments, we had to get another loan.
Yep.
So that's how it started to happen. And then we knew that, we had to get out of this warehouse, because that's the most expensive thing that we did have. And we needed to find jobs. Yep. We needed to find more income. And so we got out of that warehouse, and then I know you were the first one to leave and find a job. And we didn't leave because we were still doing it. It was just more of like in the day-to-day, because at that point we were both going full-time in that business. Yep. And then I was still trying to manage the sales of it, because what the revenue was bringing in, it was pretty considerable. Mm-hmm. What was it? I don't know if you remember.
The revenue after, I think it was 100,000 flat for 2018.
So it was still considerable. So It makes sense for, at the very least, for one to continue fulfilling it, selling it, listing it. And so I know you took that step, and I know we got into a storage unit. Mm-hmm. And so, that's how 2018 went, and we were working off a storage unit.
To recap, I know that during the years of Forma Apparel, our first business, we went into a lot of debt. So how you mentioned, we had a warehouse that we were paying $2,700 a month. We both had personal loans, $18,000 and $18,000, which is $36,000. During the 2016 year, I know that you got a new car, which was a Toyota Prius.
Yeah.
And I got a Toyota Prius, so we used to drive those cars back in the day. And then we had regular lines of credit loans. We had credit card debt because we weren't making enough money to pay ourselves. We were just taking enough money from the business to just pay our basic expenses, food and living expenses. And one of the things I would say is I'm glad we failed, because I know you say it from time to time that was a great learning experience, because I know that even though we went into $80,000 in debt, us finding jobs and working jobs was still enough to cover the monthly expenses. Maybe it wasn't enough to cover the whole and wipe out the whole debt, but it was enough to cover the monthly expenses, the $400, $500 in debt.
So it was manageable to the point where we didn't need to go into bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Our jobs provided enough income to pay for all of those. So I'm very glad that happened, because if we didn't learn these lessons and we got to a point where it was at a 7-figure run rate, or it was producing a lot of revenue, and we over leveraged, we got loans, we did all these things thinking that the trend was going to continue. At that point, with that amount of revenue and that amount of expenses, that amount of responsibility, it would have really put us in an extremely bad place, bankruptcy. Like there's really no way for us to
get out of it. Yeah.
And so I'm very glad that happened at that time.
More than anything, it was a learning experience. But one of my recommendations, which both of us say it, is that yes, it's very good to learn from your mistakes, but it's also very important to learn from other people's mistakes. So in our business, the reason why we failed is because we over leveraged. We got a lot of loans to be able to buy inventory. We made bad decisions buying certain inventory that wasn't selling. We thought just because we had the inventory, it was gonna sell. That doesn't work like that. And it's just logistical issues and inexperience that everything added all up together for us to fail the business per se. So that was 2018. And I know our mentality, at least for me, it was a little bit of a bad taste in the mouth failing the business. And I remember, I think I mentioned it to you, or we both decided that, all right, maybe we're just gonna calm it down, cool off a little bit. We're gonna wait a couple of years. We're gonna be working jobs, gather enough money to pay off the debt. And then once we are debt free, we're gonna start another business, which we kind of had planned that it was gonna take 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, like 2018, let's just pay off the debt. Let's worry about that. And that was it.
I think what helped us start the business is our values. But then also it's because I know we made a lot of sacrifice. I know that because we were in a lot of debt, we weren't spending a lot of money. We used to go to the gym, and I only had like $4 to my name. You had a few cents. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you were going overdraft, and we only had enough money to buy a donut and a double gulp. Yep. So that was our treat for us staying good and staying the part. But it was around a year and a half that, on my end, I didn't go out with friends. I didn't buy anything expensive. I didn't buy any clothing. I didn't buy anything. Haircuts, I would cut my own hair. And that was because I didn't have enough money. So at least on our end, it was good for us to just be disciplined and just put your head down and just grind it out. Because I know that we could have easily just said, man, fuck it. What's a few extra $1,000 by going out or by spending this amount of money? So we were focused. And then come 2019, how my brothers say, we still had the itch. And we started the business. Mm-hmm. I know it came from an idea. We started talking because I know before that, I wanted to do a separate business and you wanted to do the business we're currently doing, which I wanted to do something in soccer, whether it be starting a club, selling clothing, selling something with soccer. So I wanted to do that. And I remember we were at a party.
Oh, yeah.
At a family member's party, and we were talking numbers. And what you were telling me made a lot more sense than what I wanted to do. And so that's where it started with the idea. It started towards the beginning of 2019, and then I think mid 2019, that's when we started just getting focused and started purchasing everything we needed.
Our all previous experiences, not over leveraging ourselves, e-commerce, knowing how to do titles, knowing how to do images, knowing how to do descriptions, knowing where to sell, eBay, Amazon, websites, Shopify, because that's something also we learned in our clothing business. We learned how to create our own website. So all that experience, it led us to 2019.
So 2019, we started our current business, and I know we're gonna talk numbers. And I guess just to give a little bit of context is that we didn't start from scratch in 2019. We had multiple years of experience. We knew how to list on different platforms. We knew what platforms worked, what platforms didn't. We knew suppliers. We knew, basically it's just 4 or 5 years of experience dwindled down to 2019 that allowed us to do the following revenue that I'm gonna share with you. So just to recap the revenue that we did in 2019, and this is gonna be rounded to the lowest number. So in May, we had our first sale, which was $100. Come June, we did $2,200. July was $8,100. August was $12,600. September was $16,300. October was $19,000. November was $20,000. And December was $26,000. So for that first year, it was roughly 6-7 months of us working, and we crossed the $100,000 mark.
Yeah.
And again, I know that there's people out there that are freaking smart, which I don't consider myself smart. I do think it's the consistency and hard work. But I know that there's other people that just blow those numbers out of the park. But at least for us, not knowing any person that was rich, not having any connections or nothing, we just pretty much from trial and error, that's how we learned.
Yep.
And that first year we were able to break the 100K mark.
Again, for the second time.
Yeah, for the second time, exactly.
But this one, it was very different because we didn't have any debts. We didn't over leverage ourselves. The majority of income was profit because we, at that point, that's when we started seeing the bank account grow. That's where it went from essentially $0 to, $1,000 in the 4 figures. Then it went to the 5 figures, over 10,000. So, and that was the very first time that the bank account went over $10,000, the business bank account.
Yeah.
And so it was very different. Those $100 in that year was very different, extremely different. And it was just like how you mentioned, through the years of experience, years of learning, years of just taking all of that and putting it to the business that we're at. Yeah.
We were able to break the 100K mark. We hired our employee again, which was a part-timer. And then we were able to move from a small unit, because I remember we were working off of a small office that was 25 square feet. Remember, it was cramped.
Just this, like, it was very small.
It was very small. So we moved to a bigger warehouse, and we were able to do that in 2019. Now come 2020, I know that multiple things happened. So off the top of your head, do you remember what happened roughly in 2019?
So we were already coming up strong, ending the year very strong. And so in 2020, early 2020, March, I believe is when it happened, COVID hit. And so that's when things just shut down. Everything went into, like, you had to be home. We were in the right boat. We were in the right industry, e-commerce, online, because around that time, it's just where things online started to explode. People were at home. They were stuck at home. They couldn't leave, so they couldn't go shopping. They couldn't go to different places. So all they could do is be online, be watching entertainment, Netflix, Amazon Prime, whatever it is, and just buying stuff, especially when the government started giving out the stimulus checks and unemployment, where with the unemployment, people were making more from unemployment than they had ever made, in the same time frame. Yeah. The rents, I know some of them were, I think, forgiven. Mortgages were, I think, paused. And so people were just at home receiving all this money. They couldn't go outside, spend it. So all they could do is just shop online. Luckily, we were online. We were there. And so that's when we saw our business go from essentially doubled.
It doubled. So I remember the numbers. I know prior to that, we were able to scale it up to $80,000 based on what we were doing. So it went from $80,000 to $160,000 in a matter of just a month.
In a month. So it's like we didn't do anything.
Nothing.
We were just in the right boat, in the right industry, luckily. And that's one of the things that I do want to emphasize, being and picking the right industry. Because if you go into, let's say, newspapers, or you go into something that is very, very extremely saturated, where there's a lot of competition, it might not be the same. But if you pick the right boat, like which we didn't knowingly pick it, it just happened to be, things just doubled overnight. Yeah, that's where the business really started taking off. Our own personal life, we got rid of all our debt.
Yep.
And so things started looking up for us.
Yeah, because for that year 2020, I know that during the peak of the pandemic, or when everything was shut down the 2 week, I know we moved to a warehouse in HP, which is Huntington Park. But I know fast forward to October of that same year, we were able to move to our bigger warehouse, which was 6,000 square feet in Gardena. So that was our big just down. We have a big warehouse now. That happened. We also were able to retire our parents. Remember, I know that we were able to retire our mom. We gave our dad the option to, but because he's a guy and we gotta work, we gotta provide, it's just that he wanted to continue to work, but he has that option not to. And at the same time, we were looking for a house, but because of the pandemic, everything shot up. The prices of the house went up, so we were assuming that they were gonna go down in a few months. But we were able to move them out from our one-bedroom apartment into a house. We were renting at the time, but all of that happened in 2020. So we started the business in 2019, 2020. We were able to achieve everything that we wanted to.
In 2020, in a matter of a year and a half.
A year and a half. We paid off our debt. We were able to retire our parents, and we moved them out of South Central.
And then in 2021, it was just coasting.
It was coasting.
We just, we're doing the basics of the necessity, which were fulfillment, and that's essentially it.
Yeah.
That's all we did.
And I think that's a major reason because of what happened during that pandemic of 2020, because it just doubled overnight. We didn't have prior experience, or we didn't have any context of that was a once in a lifetime thing. We thought it was always gonna happen. So how my brother said, we were coasting, and that's the reason why during 2021 and 2022, the business went down. I guess to recap the revenue, on 2020, we went from $100,000 a year prior to now making $700,000 for 2020. And I know 2021, how you mentioned we were coasting, but it was still growing because of the pandemic and the stimulus check and people fighting for unemployment. It was able to go to $1.8 million. And then 2022, same thing. We were coasting even more. We decided to open up different ventures. We decided to open up a wrap shop. And then eventually for that year, 2022, I know that we dropped in sales. So we went from 1.8 million to 1.6. And then come 2023, do you remember what happened?
Yeah, so we definitely knew that things needed to change. If the business kept going at the rate that it was going, at some point, we weren't gonna have a business. So luckily, there's a lot of online free information. YouTube was our main place to go. And luckily, we came across a lot of business channels, particularly the Hermosis, both Alex and Layla Hermosis. We just started consuming their content. We started learning a lot. We started learning from people that actually have done it and are telling you exactly what it is that you need to do. Obviously not in your business, but these are the principles in business that you need to do in order for it to continue growing. And so we just learned it. We saw their companies grow. We saw everything that they did. And you know what? We learned a lot from them. Let's apply it. And so we started applying it. 2023, keeping focused. So we got rid of everything that was distracting us. And we just, okay, what are some of the things that have worked? And let's just continue doing it. So in 2023, we just put our heads down and we started grinding it out, doing the same things that had been working for us for a long time, and we stopped doing for some reason. So we just started doing that. And in 2023, that's when the revenue started going back up. And 2023, I think, was the most profitable year.
Yep.
And so in 2023, I don't know if you remember the numbers.
2023 was $2.2 million.
Yeah, so from 1.8 down to 1.6, up, $600,000 to $2.2 million a year in 2023. And so it was just through just the principles of business, doing the same thing over and over and over again. So in simple terms, it's not being distracted. And so it went up to 2.2. And yeah, it was an extremely good year.
Yep. Now, moving on to 2024, I know that, I guess prior to 2023, we moved to our current warehouse, which is a 10,000 square foot warehouse. And it's just us repeating the same things, us doing the same thing, doing what works, doing the boring works. Because I know that just from talking with some entrepreneurs is that they like new stuff. They like the
novelty of just starting something.
Yeah, it's just the novelty of starting something new that it's very hard for people to scale, because you go up to $100,000, but then something shiny appears and you want to go after that. But again, we're just staying focused and we're just repeating the same thing we did in 2023. Now for 2024,
it's gonna be over $3 million for this year of 2024. The revenue definitely has grown up. The business evolves as we grow. There's new things that we continue learning, because 2024 was also a very good learning experience, because now 2024, in order to manage and handle all that revenue coming in, we need a considerable amount of people. And so we learned a lot when it comes to working with people, hiring people, and unfortunately, parting ways, letting go of people. So there was a lot of things that we learned. And then I know through time, as the business continues to grow, there's going to be a lot of learning experiences. But 2024 is going to be also an extremely good year overall.
Yeah, so I know that the jump wasn't a lot. It's going to go from 2.2 to a little over $3 million in revenue. However, I do want to consider this more of a building the foundation, building the base. That way, when we do want to go all in the coming years, which is going to be 2025, 2026, at least we have the foundation with the people, with the focus, with the resources, with the mindset. We have a clear focus, and it's just seeing how far we could continue growing the current company.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Out of all our journey, I know that now coming to 2014, it's going to be a little bit over 10 years of experiences, 10 years of failures, 10 years of wins, 10 years of lessons learned. What would you recommend for people that are going through their entrepreneurial journey?
Just focus is what I do want to say. And so, because if we look at us, we started in 2011, 2012. E-commerce was really the first thing that started bringing in money. We eventually came back to it, and that's how we were doing. And so focus is the main thing that I would say people. And so for those that don't think it's possible, we're already doing this revenue in our company. It's extremely possible, because if we look at where we came from, we came from Mexico. We came without papers. To this day, we have work permits, so we're not technically illegal. But we don't have any, even till now, which is really bad. We don't have any network. We don't have any friends that are running businesses, or have anyone really close to us that we look up to in the business sense. We don't have that. And we were able to get to this day. So to people that don't think it's possible, it's extremely possible. And so just focus on one thing, continue doing it, and put your head down, don't get distracted, and that's all you really need to do.
If you're interested in starting a business in e-commerce, watch this video. But if you want to do something in the automotive field, watch this one. But with that being said, we'll see you on the next video.